Hello there, this is Sam, and this is episode 31 of the VictorPrep Vocab podcast. Before we go any further, as always, I will cover the words from episode 30. Those were officious. That means being assertive of authority in an annoying way, being domineering, being intrusive with your enthusiasm to offer help, or interfering. Cloying, that means an excess of sweetness or richness. It means almost too romantic, so romantic it's almost disgusting. Rarefy, that means to make more rare, or to make more thin. It's usually used with regards to thin air when you go higher in altitude. And our final word was malingerer. That's a person who malingers. That means to skip school or to skip work by pretending you're ill or sick. Our first new word is pulchritude. That is spelled P-U-L-C-H. Pulch, R-I-T-U-D, Pulchritude. Pulchritude, although it may not sound that pretty or beautiful of a word, means beauty, or fairness, or loveliness. That is pulchritude. So some synonyms are prettiness, good looks or good looking, comeliness, attractiveness, or even just beautiful. This is a word that is mainly used in literary terms, maybe in a poem or an older book. It's not a word that you usually hear people say in day-to-day life. You're not going to hear your friend say, "Wow, that girl over there is pulchritudinous." And, by the way, that is the adjective form. The noun form is pulchritude, so the pulchritude. And the adjective is pulchritudinous. So that sunset was pulchritudinous. That sunset was beautiful. The original origin of this word is from Latin. It comes from a word pulcher. I think that's how it's pronounced. I'm not an expert on pronunciation of Latin words. Pulcher, which means beautiful. I can't think of any super great way of remembering what this word means by how it sounds. If you think pulchritudinous or pulchritude is a beautiful word, that will help. But maybe it's so unusual sounding, you might just remember, oh, pulchritudinous, beautiful. So just think of someone or something you find beautiful, and think of it now, and think, wow, she's pulchritudinous, or he is pulchritudinous, or that is pulchritudinous. Meaning, he is beautiful or she is beautiful. Our second word is conundrum. That is spelled C-O-N, U-N, drum, D-R-U-M, conundrum. A conundrum is some sort of confusing or difficult problem or question. Some synonyms are problem, difficult question, quandary, dilemma, and yes, it's quite a simple word. It means a difficult problem or question, or something confusing. So, if you are asked on a game show some trick question or confusing riddle, that would be described as a conundrum. So, if any of you have read The Hobbit, Bilbo, or seen the movies, I suppose, Bilbo is asked a number of riddles by Gollum when they first meet under the Misty Mountains in Gollum's cave. Gollum asks Bilbo these riddles. One could also describe those riddles as being conundrums, because they are confusing problems or they are difficult questions. I was quite interested to find out that we actually don't know where the word originated, conundrum. We know it originated sometime in the 16th century, but no one really knows who first used it or why it came to mean a difficult problem or question. So that's interesting, because usually we do have some idea of where words come from, but conundrum, we don't know where it came from. So in a sense, conundrum is itself a conundrum. It's a problem or a riddle because we don't know where this word originated. In fact, the whole of the GRE or any test you might take is full of conundrums. It's full of difficult questions. So if you forget what conundrum means, that's almost ironic in a way, because you're being asked a difficult question around the word conundrum, and that's what it means. So maybe that will help you remember it in some odd way. Our third word is taciturn. Taciturn. I really like this word, actually. I can't explain why. I've always just loved this word. Taciturn. And it pretty much always is used to describe a person. Taciturn describes a person who is a quiet person. They are the type of person who doesn't say very much. They are reserved or uncommunicative. It doesn't mean they're mean or bad or anything negative, just that they're a quieter person. They're secretive, maybe, or close-mouthed. Some other synonyms are untalkative, uncommunicative, reticent, quiet, tight-lipped, or close-mouthed. This word comes from a Latin word tacitus, which means wordless or noiseless. And like I said, taciturn isn't a bad thing necessarily. It's just how someone is. Some people are more quiet than others, or it might be a situation that's making you want to be quiet. You want to listen. Perhaps someone is giving a speech or talking, and you're interested in what they're saying, so you're taciturn. You just stay quiet and you listen. So think about a person you know, it might be even yourself, who's naturally more quiet, someone who listens more rather than speaks a lot. That person could be described as being taciturn. Our final word for today is advocate. Advocate. An advocate is a person who publicly supports a certain cause or policy. Could also be someone who recommends a certain cause or doing something a certain way. Some synonyms are champion, upholder, supporter, or promoter. So, think about someone you know or someone you've seen on TV who is a strong supporter of a certain way of doing things or a certain cause. That could be a political cause. It could be a religious cause. It could just be something like a football team. Someone who publicly supports that team could be called an advocate for that team. Usually, the word advocate is not used with something like a soccer team, though. Usually, advocate is more about some sort of political cause or more serious matter. So there may be some sort of protest where people are demonstrating to the government to improve the problem of wage inequality. So they are trying to raise the minimum wage that all the people in the country are being paid. So they're an advocate for policy changes related to minimum wage. Or someone could be an advocate for animal rights. They are publicly recommending that we treat animals in a better way. Someone could be an advocate for making everyone have a 3-day weekend, for example. Something I think is probably a good idea. I would love to have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off. I think that would be amazing. And I like to think that everyone would work harder on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday if we had Friday off. So you could say, I'm an advocate for a 3-day weekend for everybody. A few other synonyms are spokesperson, campaigner, fighter, and crusader. Those were our 4 words. let's quickly go over the meanings again. Our first word was pulchritude. Pulchritude. That simply means physical beauty, comeliness, or attractiveness. Our second word was conundrum, and that means a confusing or difficult problem, or a difficult question. Taciturn was our next word. That is usually used when referring to a person, and a person who's quiet, reserved, not very communicative, or saying little. And our final word was advocate. Advocate. And that is a person who publicly supports a certain cause or policy, or person who promotes a certain policy. Now let's move on to our test sentences for today. My friend Jim is the kind of guy who says little, but puts a great deal of thought into his words. Many TV game shows challenge contestants to answer confusing and difficult questions, usually competing with each other to win the grand prize. There have been many public demonstrations recently where people have gathered together and protested against inequality and big business. I watched the sun slowly set over the Pacific Ocean and silently contemplated the beauty of nature. Those were our words for today. I hope that wasn't too difficult for you and that you've been learning all the words so far. Please feel free to listen to the podcast again. Repetition is a huge part of learning, as is practicing the words, using them in your day-to-day life, in your essays, in your conversations, because if you can use them, you know them. Learning isn't just about repeating a word to yourself in your head. If you can use these words and make them useful for you in your day-to-day life, then you'll know these words far more easily than simply just repeating them. So, thank you all so much for listening. This is Sam Fold. You can email me at sam.fold@gmail.com. If you enjoy the podcast and you have the time, please write a review for me on the iTunes page and like the Facebook page at facebook.com/VictorPrep learning. Thank you all so much. Have a nice day, whatever country of the world you're in. Bye-bye.